boy, do I have a story for you guys. We're going to be checking out a whole bunch of plugins today, but I can't wait to dive in, tell you the story about how these ended up in my lap. Let's check it out. So what's up guys, welcome back to the channel, Chris here. So like I was saying, I've got a story for you. Now, we're starting off with Purified Audio and its owner, Sam Pura. Now, Sam is a long-term record producer, mix engineer, really wicked. I don't really know too much about him. I was going through his credits and it seems to be a lot of heavier styles of music, which I'm not super fond of, but I can respect it. Let me take this back. Basically, Universal Audio. What is up? I quickly had to fact check myself and realized I slightly mixed up the story, but basically the story goes that Guitar Center had uploaded the everything bundle of Universal Audio on their website for $69. Bunch of people bought it. They realized this was a pricing mistake, so they ended up refunding everyone, and everyone was a little bit frustrated because it was like, oh my god, I could have saved like $9,900 or something like this. But yeah, that's basically the story. Guitar Center uploaded the everything bundle at the wrong price, and this is where we're at. So now let's check out what happens. Which is fine, mistakes happen, but I guess out of frustration, he was like, I can't believe they've just done that, and teased everyone. So you know what, I'm going to do my own thing and just put a massive sale on all my plugins for about $2. You can get everything, which is insane. These aren't, you know, cheap plugins. They're a couple £100. Great value deal. $2, you get 8 plugins or whatever it is, and they're all very high quality. I've just been testing them out on this track. So today we're going to dive into a big chunk of these plugins, if not all of them. I'm going to run through them very roughly just to kind of get a feel, but I've had this song that I've been working on for a while, and I figured let's try chuck it on a bit of everything and see what it does, how it sounds. To start off, I'm going to do a quick search for Purified, and you can see these are all the plugins that they've got at Purified Audio. And where do we begin? If we look through them, Death Western is a guitar amp. We've got a couple of compressors such as LED compressor, micro limiter, and the VU compressor. We've got Liquid Death Snare, which is super fascinating. I'm really into that. SLP 538, which is kind of like a SSL style EQ. And then lastly, we've got the Panda Rooms. The Panda Rooms is his, well, I guess the Panda Studios is his studio, so he's gone and recorded all the rooms, and you can use the impulses of the rooms. You can use that sound as a reverb, as a room tone, which sounds really great. So we're going to dive into a little bit of everything. I've got this kind of alternative track, I guess you could say, that we're working on, and we're just going to start diving into the plugins. Starting off, I'm going to solo all the drums, and I'm just going to check out this VU compressor. So when I was doing a bit of digging on all of these plugins, I noticed Sam himself has actually done a post on a forum where he's talking about all the different plugins and basically the reasoning behind them, why he made them in the first place, or what they're really about. So starting at the VU, he said, I wanted a plugin with my 3 Hairball 1176s and LA3A level matched and gain staged. I already had my workflow auditioned between them when mixing, so we baked that into the plugin. Always lives on vocals, guitars, bass, still one of the most essential tools for me. Really sick. Let's give it a listen. This is what it sounds like as the drum compressor. Loving that. I actually really like that 3A sound, so I think I'm going to stick with that. But as you can see, not too many crazy controls. We've got input, output. Like he said, he's got this auto gain that's actually really accurate, I would say. I feel a certain way about auto gain because a lot of the time I feel like it overshoots it. So if you're turning something up and it's meant to turn something down, it's never really turning it down enough. It always feels like I have to turn it down a little bit more. But so far, these plugins, the auto gain has felt really good, really solid. Sound of the compression is great. I like the fact that this plugin in particular is relatively basic. You've got your input output similar to 1176 vibe, but in this case, you've just got 4 flavors. If you want a little bit of EQ, pre or post compression, you also have that option, which is really nice. And I find the EQ actually sounds quite smooth and quite nice. Let's give it a listen. Sounding really wicked though. Just looking at the rest of the controls, we've got mix control and THD, which is the total harmonic distortion, where it starts off in the middle is default, so you've got natural amount of distortion. At -10 there's no distortion, and then at +10 there's loads of distortion. Now, just looking through the manual of this, I can see that it gives me a good description on what each of these are actually doing. Now, they're obviously all based on 1176s, the three 1176s that he has, but they're different models. So the first one is more of the blue face. Bear in mind the attack and release is set the same throughout all of them. I believe even the ratio. Let's have a look. Yep, even the ratio. Really nothing should change, you know, in terms of what the compressors are doing, but sonically they should have different vibes about them. The first one is based on a blue face 1176, the second one is a black face, and the third one's a more modern black face, which sounds slightly different. The slowest attack, 0.8 milliseconds, and the fastest release setting at 4:1 ratio. That's more or less what this plugin is giving you on the 1176s. And then the 3A, but this model specifically using Sampure's custom 3A style leveling amplifier, so it's not actually an LA 3A. Sounds really great though, I'm really digging this. Let's check out some of the other plugins I've got on the kick here. The LED compressor. I really like this. I'm getting a bit of a distressor vibe. I think it's kind of mimicking a few things, but there's definitely some distressor attitude that's in this plugin right here. So similar kind of layout on the top, nothing is really changing, but in terms of the controls we get for the compression, now we've actually got some control on the ratio. Still the same pre-post EQ on the low end and the high end if we want that. And now we actually have some levels of saturation that we can add, similar to what you would find on that distressor. So in this case, saturation 1, saturation 2. Saturation 1 is even harmonic, saturation 2 is odd harmonic. So you're going to be getting different flavors there, but I really like it. Let's give this compressor a quick listen. I'll bypass it and then I'll turn it on. Really loving it though. I'm using Superior Drummer for these drums that you're listening to, and I love it, sounds great, but I really enjoy the process of mixing it and bringing these drums to life. And I feel like when I slapped this compressor on the kick, it just became 3D and it sounded realistic. It just felt, you know, a lot more genuine. Yeah, I could hear the room, I could really feel that kick. And right now we're on a 2:1 ratio, you know, if we crank it, we're gonna be getting different vibes. But I really like that soft 2:1. I'm still feeling the low end pushing through and sounds really great, but there is a high pass in case that low end is doing too much compression, which is really nice. Let's hear, I've got it on the snare as well, so we can do a quick before and after. And I've actually got it on the overheads as well, so let's get that. Let's do a quick before and after. Sounding really sick, digging that. Let's jump onto the next plugin because we've got a few more to crack on with. So let's check out the SLP 538 EQ. As you can tell, SSL style EQ, real nice. They don't have like a Q control to change the width of each bell, but instead have a high Q button, which is fine. I thought it was going to bug me, but actually found it quite convenient. Turn it on, crank it, you know, sweep the frequencies, and then you just turn it on or off if you need it or you don't. So it was actually pretty convenient and sounds really nice. Let's check it out on the snare. Yeah, mainly just boosting some low end, I guess, in this case, and a little bit of top end. Sounds clean. Not really too much to say. They all have this total harmonic distortion control, which is great if you need it, but otherwise sounds really clean. And I quite like the simplified layout of this. You know, it's not overkill, there's no compression and stuff, so maybe if you're wanting to go with a slightly more basic mixing approach, and instead of having all of these complex controls, you just want EQ, compression. That seems to be the vibe of Sam, is what I'm getting. Is just straight, simple, to the point. He knows what he's reaching for. But I think it sounds great. Really nice, really clean. Not much more else to say about that. I want to talk about, we've got a couple more compressors and stuff like this, but I really want to talk about the Panda Rooms, we've got this bad boy. Sheesh. So this is the Panda Rooms. You can see here, we got 10 rooms. All different rooms available in Sam's studio, Panda Studios. And we've got a couple different channels here. I'm gonna just solo the room itself. This is what it sounds like. Wicked. Let's check through the other rooms. There we go. That's the 10 rooms. They all sound really nice. I like how kind of small they are, but they've got a little bit of life to them. Really cool. So looking at the bottom, you can see we've got 5 channels worth of mics. The U47 is mono, the rest are stereo, but I quite like actually that you can change the width of the stereo mics if you so please, but you got width, balance, solo, mono, and then a couple of controls, pre-delay, tone, high pass filter, low pass filter. And all of these are linked, which actually makes it really convenient to just sculpt the overall room sound. Let's just quickly flick through all the mics and see how they sound. Oh, love those ribbons. Sounds great. So sounding wicked. Just to quickly dive through what mics we actually have available. We've got the U47, a classic large diaphragm condenser. They've got specs on like where these mics were placed, you know, how far from the source and this and that in the manual. So if you really want to dive in, you could check it out there. Yeah, so we've got U47, we've got Louis, which is a binaural microphone, one of these head microphones. And then we've got SDC, small diaphragm condenser. And I believe something like these. They're running it in an XY pattern, like so. Next, we've got 2 ribbons, doesn't really specify which ones, but in a plumb line. So you've got 2 figure of 8s at a 90-degree angle, basically picking up the sides, and that's your stereo sound. And then lastly, the large diaphragm condenser, which they have labeled as infamous stereo XY custom Panda mics, placed over 25 feet away from the source in the next room. Interesting. So very distant kind of compared to the rest of the microphones got available. But again, sounds really clean. Really like it. I don't know if clean is the term, but I just really like the drum room sound. Like that layered with the drums, or should I say the drums layered with the room. I'll turn it off and we can hear it with and without. First, without. Can really hear it. It sounds, it's just giving the drums a little bit of air and it's just giving them a bit of depth. I just really like what it's adding. There's not much more to say. I think it just sounds great. Okay, so before we get to the last compressor, let's check out the Liquid Death Snare. Apparently this is like an 80 quid snare or something. But I'm actually going to create a new layer for this just so we can show it off in full. But basically it's a snare sample, you know. Not like nothing too crazy going on here, but it's mic'd up really well and we have access to all the channels, so I'm just gonna default it. You even have the option to tune the snare. You can keep it to a one shot so the samples aren't necessarily changing and it's just always the same, locked in. And that's it. They just offer a rim shot, a flam, and a multi-level velocity hit. So you got that option if you need it, as well as being able to tune the snare pretty well. So when I was looking into this, what I really liked was the fact that it's kind of a do-it-all snare. If you just need a generic acoustic snare drum, it sounds pretty good throughout, especially if you're changing the tuning. You can get a lot of sounds out of it. But what I found super fascinating was when he was saying that you can basically just kill all of the direct mics, you know, and just use the overheads close and far. And so that's what I've done in this instance. Is here I'm just using those with a bit of a blend, but we can hear what it sounds like just dry with everything, and then we'll go through them and see how they sound. So that's what it sounds like. If I had to turn on the one shot, you'll see what I mean. It's just the same sample, whereas when it's off, each sample is slightly different, so it gives you a little bit of freedom, which is quite nice. Also, something to mention, I was going through the presets, and I really like these iconic snares. They've got a couple of songs, and I was referencing them, you know, listening to the song, listening to the snare, and it sounds pretty decent. Maybe not 100%, but obviously they're different snares at the end of the day. But like, you're close enough that if you're feeling a certain vibe, whether it's Blink or whatever, you can just have a starting point, which is really nice. In this case, I did really enjoy just layering the snare I had, which is this. Already has a little bit of ambience, and even if I had to include the overheads, get a little bit more ambience, but this I'm literally just using for just that ambience. This little bit of air to sit on top of the snare. Yeah, sounding really wicked though. Top stuff, Sam, top stuff. Okay, so last couple of plugins to check out. We've got the micro limiter. What am I gonna stick this on? Let's put on the acoustic, see how it sounds. I mean, you can see not loads going on. Input, output, which we basically pick one of, and then the release. And otherwise, everything else on the top, share this amongst the plugins. But micro limiter, it's a limiter, nothing too crazy. It's just compressing at the hardest amount it can compress, creating a level of fatness to an extent. But obviously, you don't want to overdo it because it's as hard as compression can be. But I would like to check that post on the forum and see what Sam had to say about it. He said, for about a decade, this was my desert island compressor. Stereo on keys, percussion, rooms, backing vocals, anything I wanted to hammer into place. I even used to reamp entire keyboard stem channels through it because it just beat everything in the box. So there you go. Nothing fancy. A limiter, clearly working good in groups. So maybe let's try it on a group. You know what? Why don't we just chuck it on the rooms that we were using for the drums? Also, speaking of drums, if you're hearing any of that in the background, they're just recording a bit of drums, so apologies for that. But yeah, let's listen to this drum sound. Auto gain, I'm going to turn it off for this instance. Also, one thing I thought was quite interesting is there's a ×2 on the input. So you can go in normal or you can go in ×2, which I guess if it's not limiting enough, which is kind of what I feel in this case, I feel like we can be pushing it harder, just go ×2. insane. Honestly, even so few options on the plugin, it just sounds really good, really just ticking the box as a limiter should. I have to say, graphically, I love how the plugins look. I think they sound really clean, really easy to navigate, and there's a theme, you know, everything kind of follows each other in terms of navigation with the plugins. I think it's really easy. If you learn one, they share a lot of similar features. But yeah, really digging it. I think it sounds sick. Sam, shout out. You're an absolute legend for dropping the prices on this. If it's still around, I would suggest you strongly go check them out. If there isn't the sale, go check them out anyway. I'm going to leave the link to his website in the description so you can check them out, have a listen, see for yourself. There's also free trials on all of this, so have a go, see what you think. But otherwise, guys, that is the video for today. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you think. Do you own these plugins? Did you cop the plugins whilst the sale was going on? Would love to know. But otherwise, that's about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Once again, I've been Chris Vella. I'll see you on the next one.